They came from the dark, silent, organized, and utterly confident. The Zarkith Dominion had consumed entire star systems without a single setback. Their fleet, a towering armada of precision and destruction, now approached Earth, expecting yet another effortless conquest. Scans indicated a technologically inferior civilization. Primitive fusion drives, laughably basic orbital defense systems, and no centralized planetary government. To the Zarkith, this was not war. It was cleanup. Admiral Karun stood aboard the command vessel, his confidence absolute. The humans, to him, were quaint and fragmented, with no real grasp of galactic warfare. He had reviewed intercepted transmissions, arguments, division, and constant media chaos. A species incapable of unity could never resist the Dominion. His advisors agreed. Earth would fall within the cycle. But then, the transmission came. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't arrogance either. It was calm, unified, cold, and direct. Translated into dozens of galactic dialects, one single message echoed through the fleet's comms. Leave. This is your only warning. You will not receive another. For the first time in years, silence filled the bridge. Some of the younger officers exchanged uncertain glances. Others scoffed. Karun smirked. How noble! He muttered, dismissing it as theater. Warnings were always the last gasp of the weak. He ordered the fleet forward. The human defenses would be shattered, their leaders captured, their populations subjugated as labor to fuel the Dominion's endless expansion. No resistance was detected upon entering Earth's orbit. The blue-green planet appeared unsuspecting, almost peaceful. Tactical scans showed no planetary shield systems, no deep space interceptors, not even armed stations beyond geostationary orbit. Karun interpreted the lack of military response as submission. The humans must have realized resistance was futile. Another broadcast was picked up, but this time it wasn't live. It was an automated signal loop, repeating the earlier warning. No change in tone. No plea for mercy. Just the same calm words. Leave. This is your only warning. An advisor recommended jamming the transmission. Another suggested tracing the source. But Karun wasn't concerned. The message to him meant fear. An admission of hopelessness. He authorized initial maneuvers, orbital surveillance sweeps, high-altitude drones, landing fleet deployment. Still, no resistance. But something felt off. Their fleet's sensors began to experience glitches. Small ones at first, brief distortions, signal flickers, misreadings of atmospheric data. Tech crews chalked it up to solar interference. Karun brushed it aside. Earth's sun was weak. These readings were beneath concern. The real operation was unfolding planet-side. Teams were dispatched. Dropships descended. The capital cities were identified for strategic dominance. But when the scouts arrived, they didn't find defensive installations or panicked populations. They found silence. No military presence. Streets cleared. Buildings sealed. Broadcasts ceased. No weapons fired. No communications responded. This was not submission. It was something else. Yet Karun pressed forward, unwilling to see anything but inevitable victory. The humans were hiding, that's all. Waiting for a futile last stand. Then, the second anomaly occurred. One of their recon ships, still in low orbit, simply vanished. No explosion. No distress signal. Just off the grid. Immediately, internal scans were ordered. Still no human activity. The admiral believed perhaps a malfunction or collision occurred. A minor setback. But then a second ship disappeared. And a third. No patterns. No trails. Gone. Now, unease crept through the command bridge. Karun tried to restore order. They're sabotaging our instruments. Cowards' tactics. Maintain discipline. But doubt had taken root. Another transmission arrived. Not from Earth. From one of their own ships, seconds before going silent. We were warned. That voice belonged to Fleet Commander Jarnock, Karun's most trusted second. His tone carried something alien to the Dominion, a sound they hadn't heard directed at them in generations: terror. Panic was not in the Zarkith vocabulary. They were conquerors. But now, as silence began consuming their formation, and Earth remained utterly still, the warning replayed in Charon's mind with chilling clarity. They had been warned. And they hadn't listened. The order was given. Deploy full force. The Zarkith fleet began its offensive, expecting immediate collapse of human resistance. Hundreds of high-orbit drones descended. Planetary scanning systems targeted major infrastructure points. From above, Earth looked helpless, exposed, undefended. But within minutes, the operation began unraveling. The first drone strike never landed. It vanished mid-descent, no explosion, no interference detected. The control signal simply cut. Then another, and another. 50 drones disabled before touching the upper atmosphere. Zarkith engineers scrambled for answers. Diagnostics showed clean launches. No jamming. No anti-air defense signatures. Just signal blackout followed by disappearance. Charon dismissed it as a software fault and ordered replacements. The next wave met the same fate. Frustrated, Charon authorized the deployment of atmospheric disruptors, machines designed to cause chaos in planetary weather systems. But even before launch, those ships began malfunctioning. Systems froze. Engines stalled. In some cases, entire compartments depressurized without cause. What little telemetry they could recover revealed impossible energy spikes, patterns inconsistent with any known human technology. Zarkith technicians were ordered to investigate the interference. They isolated part of the signal spectrum and found something shocking: layered, pulse frequency patterns, not random static, but deliberate code. Earth was broadcasting a form of data that interfered directly with Zarkith neural interface systems. Their tech wasn't being destroyed, it was being repurposed. While panic brewed internally, the surface remained eerily calm. Human cities were dark, their skies quiet. But when Zarkith forces attempted low-orbit scans again, their satellites were met with a new anomaly: reflected signals. Their own scans bounced back distorted, unreadable. The planet had turned its atmosphere into a mirror of encrypted noise. The fleet was now blind. Charon ordered ground landings. 10 battalions dispatched across continents. Each was heavily armed, supported by combat AI, trained for urban pacification. Dropships initiated descent. The moment they entered cloud layer, communication cut. The ships never returned. Hours passed. Not a single word, image, or signal from the landing teams. No gunfire, no distress calls. Silence. Charon demanded live feeds, but nothing came. Surveillance relays showed static. Recon crafts sent to investigate also went dark. No debris found. No signs of struggle. Just disappearance. Then came the first message from Earth since their arrival. This time, it wasn't automated. "You were warned." Simple. Unchanged tone. No inflection. A reminder, not a threat. And with it came a burst transmission, compressed footage from one of the lost battalions. No timestamp, no metadata. Just a single continuous shot: Zarkith soldiers walking through empty city streets, visibly unsettled. No humans in sight. Then, one by one, their systems failed. Weapons shut down. Visors glitched. Body cams cut. The last frame was of a soldier screaming, not in pain, but in raw fear. The footage ended. Nothing else followed. Charon's command structure faltered. Officers questioned if Earth had mastered some unknown form of psychological warfare. But no known race could disable systems so cleanly, so silently. No plasma blasts. No kinetic weapons. Just disruption. Desperation set in. Charon called in high-altitude suppressor ships equipped with full planetary lockdown protocols. These were the last resort vessels, never before used in full-scale war. As they positioned themselves for global suppression, they encountered a different kind of resistance. Gravity distorted. Navigation systems misaligned. Stabilizers couldn't compensate. These were warships designed to withstand solar flares and ion storms, yet they began drifting, slowly, then violently. One shattered against a moon fragment. Another imploded mid-course, no external contact. The rest turned back, crippled by forces untraceable and invisible. Panic was no longer a theory. It had manifested. The fleet's formation collapsed into defensive posturing. Signals were erratic. Fleet-wide software began rewriting itself, as if hijacked. No virus was detected. No human code. Just blank data layers overriding command protocols. Karan called for retreat formation. That order never left the ship. The command console froze, his words unheard. Lights dimmed. The temperature dropped by several degrees. Another transmission came through, unbidden, untraceable, with perfect clarity. This was your choice. Nothing more. Karan finally understood. Earth hadn't prepared for a war, they had set a trap. From the first warning, they had counted on arrogance. Every move by the fleet had been anticipated. Every failure engineered. Humanity had chosen silence not from fear, but from mastery. This was not a battlefield. It was execution. Karan demanded answers, but none came. His fleet, once an icon of imperial dominance, was now blind, deaf, and unraveling. His science officers couldn't explain how their encryption keys had been duplicated and neutralized. Ship systems refused to obey. Core processors looped in endless reboots. Entire modules were non-responsive. No human craft had ever been sighted, no shots fired, yet one by one, Zarkith vessels were slipping into silence. That was when the grid activated. From Earth's orbit, thousands of small, previously unregistered objects revealed themselves, satellites cloaked in low-energy drift, positioned with surgical precision. Each one emitted a narrow pulse that struck specific Zarkith hulls. They didn't explode. They didn't burn. They simply collapsed, compacted in seconds, crushed from within by forces no Dominion scientist understood. There were no signatures of known energy weapons, no traces of projectiles. Just instantaneous internal failure. Project Cerberus had been dormant. Until now. Each satellite was a fragment of a larger killweb, deployed decades ago in silence and hidden among orbital debris. Not one transmission had ever been detected from them, until the moment they struck. Their pulses triggered exotic chain reactions inside the Zarkith tech architecture, taking advantage of subtle weaknesses buried deep in neural-linked processors. Vulnerabilities the humans had somehow discovered, mapped, and waited to exploit. Karan tried to reposition his remaining ships into deeper orbit. It didn't matter. The killweb adjusted with terrifying speed, rerouting pulse relays and isolating targets like a living intelligence. Human war algorithms weren't just autonomous, they were predictive. Every defensive pattern was countered within seconds. Every escape route became a trap. As chaos spread, humanity's offensive units emerged, not from space, but from Earth's oceans. Submerged launch platforms, hidden deep within trenches, opened silently. From them, hypersonic drones tore into the sky, launching without signature heat, riding magnetically boosted rails that left no emissions. They carried no explosives. Instead, they housed rods of dense, ultra-stable alloys. Kinetic impactors. They fell upward into orbit like invisible spears, piercing Zarkith hulls clean through without even slowing. One ship shattered under direct impact. Others lost propulsion, drifting until intercepted by orbital killweb pulses. The Dominion's fleet hierarchy collapsed. Central command was cut off. Backup channels jammed. Coordination lost. Some ships attempted manual retreat, firing engines at full burn, but the moment their cores crossed designated orbital thresholds, pre-embedded traps activated. Spatial distortion fields, engineered by manipulating localized gravity, twisted space around the vessels, warping their trajectories mid-flight. They didn't explode. They simply vanished from the battlefield, consumed by folds in physics they couldn't resist. On the surface, human forces remained unseen. The battalions sent earlier were never attacked. They were absorbed. Once inside the cities, their suits had been scanned, disassembled digitally, and overridden. Their weapons disarmed. The very streets they walked were traps, smart structures built with embedded EM dampeners and sensor disruptors. The soldiers hadn't been killed. They had been surgically dismantled, down to their neural implants, rendered inert without a single shot. Perfect clinical defeat. The Dominion never believed Earth could possess such capabilities. Their intelligence reports showed fragmented political structures, aging infrastructure, and internal chaos. But the mistake wasn't in assessing power, it was in failing to recognize intent. Earth had spent decades allowing itself to be underestimated. What appeared as division was misdirection. What was seen as underdevelopment was concealment. The real defense wasn't visible in orbit, but buried in code, timing, silence, and patience. Then came Earth's hidden fleets. Emerging from the moon's shadow, they were black as void, built without reflection panels, covered in signal-eating surfaces. No emblems, no lights. Ghost ships guided by AI systems unbound by organic hesitation. They surrounded what remained of the Zarkith Armada, forming a perimeter without a word. No negotiation. No declaration. Just silent orbiting death. Charon's flagship was the last to be approached. A direct transmission was finally received, this one from a human voice. Not synthetic, not pre-recorded. Calm. Measured. You mistook silence for weakness. You mistook peace for incapacity. You ignored the warning. He tried to respond, but his console refused input. Every control had been overridden. The voice returned colder now. This wasn't defense. This was assessment. You failed. In that moment, Charon understood. The humans had watched every move, every formation, every choice. They had studied the Dominion like a predator learning prey behavior. The warning wasn't a bluff, it was a calculated threshold. And they had crossed it. By the time the voice ended, Charon was alone. His fleet was gone. Charon stared into the void, surrounded by the cold silence of failure. His fleet had not been defeated in battle, it had been erased. What remained were broken hulls tumbling in silence, engines extinguished, command signals severed beyond recovery. His own ship floated helplessly within a perimeter drawn not by weapons, but by presence alone. Earth's ghost fleet held position, unmoving, unblinking. They didn't chase, didn't provoke. They simply waited. Desperation overtook command channels. Lower officers screamed for orders. Emergency protocols failed. Life support systems remained stable, yet displays blinked with unknown data. Scripts written in unfamiliar codes cycled across consoles, Earth's imprint, a signature of their takeover. Dominion AI, once superior, now sat frozen, overwritten by silent invaders that never physically boarded. Every function had been stolen before anyone realized it was gone. Across the wreckage of the Dominion force, human precision continued. The ships that tried to drift away found their hulls magnetically tagged. One by one, they were pulled into decaying orbits and gently dismantled midair. Human drones didn't destroy for spectacle. They removed pieces, weapon ports, comm relays, engine cores, like surgeons dismantling a threat cell by cell. Inside the Earth atmosphere, the destruction was equally surgical. Human counterforces emerged only once enemy resistance had collapsed. Not tanks. Not jets. Mobile units moved swiftly across terrain, reprogramming Dominion devices and marking drop zones for extraction. There were no firefights. Zarkith forces, still alive but cut off, were surrounded and captured without direct confrontation. Their implants had already been disabled. Their armor betrayed them, now broadcasting their locations to nearby human operators. Prisoners were taken. None were harmed. None were tortured. But none were allowed access to their own technology. They were caged in silence, left only with the reality that they had never understood their enemy. Above, the last of the Zarkith heavy cruisers attempted a suicide protocol. Self-detonation codes were entered. The countdown began. But detonation never occurred. Human systems had already rewritten the firewalls. The cores shut down before ignition. Life aboard was preserved, but control was permanently lost. Karen received one final broadcast. Not a message. Not a threat. A compilation. Footage of each tactical failure. Each trap they fell into. Each ship dismantled. Each squad erased. Edited chronologically. Each second underscored by a repeating phrase at the corner of the feed, asterisk. This could have been avoided. Asterisk. The last clip showed Karan's own face aboard his command ship, days earlier, when the first warning was received. His own smirk. His own words. Let them bark. We'll break them. Now the bark had become a ghost. And the break, irreversible. In the Dominion's memory, no conflict had ended like this. No scorched earth, no battlefield glory, no monuments to honor the dead. Just quiet, deliberate neutralization. No war music. Just stillness. Karan looked around at his remaining crew. The fear in their eyes was new. Not fear of death, but fear of survival. Of returning home with nothing but disgrace. Their weapons, their armor, their command, stripped. Left alive only because humans willed it so. Not because of mercy. But because of calculation. The ghost fleet finally moved. Not forward. But backward. They disengaged, vanished into artificial shadow. No celebration. No posturing. Just silence. Karan's ship began to drift. His crew realized the trap had now closed behind them. There would be no second strike, no retaliation. Humanity had sent no diplomats, made no political demands, established no control over their captive systems. They didn't conquer. They demonstrated. The fleet hadn't lost a battle. They had violated a boundary, one clearly marked. The price wasn't revenge. It was example. One by one, surviving Zarkith vessels were powered down and towed by unmanned drones toward the edge of the system. Those who resisted were redirected without damage. No choices offered. Just a route home. Karan's vessel was the last to leave. And before the edge of human territory was crossed, one last data packet was received, encrypted, untraceable, auto-playing on every surviving Zarkith screen. It contained only a single phrase. You were not defeated. You were spared. Karan returned to Zarkith space in silence. No fleet accompanied him, no fanfare awaited his arrival. His command ship was a tomb of failure, floating evidence of humiliation. No transmissions were sent ahead. The Dominion didn't need warning, they had already intercepted fragments. Rogue signals, intercepted drone captures, and corrupted flight logs told pieces of a larger truth. The most powerful fleet in their history had been dismantled without a proper battle. But only Karan carried the full burden. He had seen it all. When he docked, no questions were asked. His ship was immediately quarantined, system sealed for investigation. He was escorted in silence to high command. There were no tribunals, no executioners, only a chamber of data analysts, warlords, and strategists who watched the recordings extracted from his vessel. Not dramatized footage. Not manipulated logs. Raw truth. They saw the orbital disappearances. The silent atmospheric traps. The gravity anomalies. The cybernetic collapse. They saw soldiers unarmed without violence. Ships split apart with no weapons discharged. And they saw Karan's face at every stage, each decision, each denial, each ignored warning. The final recording played. The voice. You were not defeated. You were spared. Silence followed. No one spoke. Not even the warlords who had once celebrated conquest as divine right. Even the eldest among them, veterans of centuries of expansion, sat frozen. They had ruled by strength, dominated through fear, and counted victories by the obliteration of resistance. But this wasn't war. This wasn't peace either. It was dominion of a different nature, a power that chose to destroy only what was necessary, and only to make a point. They didn't understand humans. That much was now undeniable. Their intel had failed not in facts, but in interpretation. They had catalogued Earth's weaponry, measured its defenses, evaluated its armies. What they missed was the mindset, the intent, the patience. Humanity had built its defense not for immediate war, but for an inevitable one, calculated down to the behavior of the invader. The Dominion had walked into a scenario that had been mathematically foreseen, psychologically prepared for, and flawlessly executed. Within weeks, word spread. Other empires who had considered Earth as a future target withdrew reconnaissance teams. Outposts near human trade routes suddenly went dark. Treaties previously dismissed were now studied with new respect. Even species that had once laughed at Earth's chaotic broadcasts began decoding every transmission, looking for patterns they had once ignored. Fear turned into reverence. Rumors flourished. That humans had AI gods living beneath their oceans. That they wielded weapons too dangerous to use openly. That they had mastered time manipulation and chose not to display it. That their real armies had never even been seen. That the fleet which destroyed the Dominion wasn't their main force, just a warning unit. None of this was confirmed. The humans offered no explanation. No interviews. No clarifications. They simply returned to their routines. Their satellites remained in place, orbiting in silence. Their systems stayed locked to outsiders. Their message, the only consistent one, was left untranslated by most civilizations but understood universally. We warned you. Inside the Dominion, a new doctrine emerged, not from leadership, but from fear. Any mention of expansion toward the Sol system was red-flagged. Any unauthorized probe risked immediate exile. The Dominion, once the most feared empire in the sector, now altered its star charts. Earth was no longer marked as a target, or even as a sovereign territory. It was left blank. Unknown. Unmapped. A void. A whispered place no fleet would enter. Parents invoked the story to discipline children. Commanders used it to justify hesitation. Karun became a symbol, not of failure, but of humanity's lesson. He was kept alive. Not forgiven. Not exiled. Just observed. The last surviving general of a fleet that vanished without honor, allowed to walk among his people so they would never forget. His silence, his haunted stare said what words could not, that somewhere beyond their grasp lived a species capable of folding war itself. Not through brute force, but through unmatched foresight, perfect timing, and unrelenting resolve. A species that warned once, and never again.